Do you ever wonder where your food comes from? That's what got us started on this adventure.
We talk to everyone we can to answer the question, what makes the Comox Valley food scene so special? Join us on our culinary exploration of this edible valley.
And welcome to another episode of the Edible Valley podcast. I'm chef and host Jonathan Fraser, here again with
Darren Howlett, co-host.
And I'm William Stringer. I'm the producer.
And the man with the questions on the board today.
I was going to just do that naturally. I'm now the question man. So I found my place because I think people are starting to work out I know very little about non-fast food.
Well, and today we're looking at we're answering that question of what does food do for us, and more importantly, how does food bring us together?
Sure.
And I thought we would just go in and sort of go off how food affects us and how it works to bring us together, and not just sustaining us and fulfilling us physically, but actually mentally. Like there's there's a reason that we have dinner parties and we go for dinner and we get together with people. And I thought we'd just visit that and our own experiences.
Jumping straight in, what would you say is the difference between eating on your own or eating with a bunch of people?
Well, there's people with you.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the effect that it has. Like it changes the meal a bit. I don't know. When I'm eating by myself, well, there's two ways if I eat by myself. There's the no one's watching me and I'm gluttonly just shoving food.
Mouth open
and just inhaling. And it's more of a thing of just substance, just to fill my belly to
hovering over the sink, just pushing food in your face.
Yeah. You know.
Right.
Yeah, pulling my shirt up to wipe my mouth, you know. You know, yeah. Anyways, that's kind of the one way. And the other way is actually just sitting down and actually reflecting on what the food is for me. That's an interesting one where I like just to sit there and just pick apart the food and feel the flavors and the tastes.
Not critically, like just experience it on a level where it's just you and the food, where you can get what you get from it.
Yeah. It's a difference in, as Will would say, going out for fast food and just shoving it down your throat.
Right.
But actually sitting there and experiencing it and sort of, you know, enjoying it. And maybe it's something we all don't do enough as people is actually experience what we're eating and get that. Whereas I think eating with people, I mean, that changes the whole atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think that is what Will had said, like the difference between eating with one person versus eating with a group, right? And I think they're very different experiences. I don't know what you think, but I think that you eat with one person, and we were sort of talking about this before. I think that there's a bit of an intimacy there. And that doesn't imply a romantic intimacy. I just think that you could be there with even not a stranger, but someone you barely know. But if it's just you and that person and the food, it's far more intimate than you and a group of people and food.
Well, and it gives you talking points.
Yeah.
Like you sit down at a table with a complete stranger, and there's only so many subjects you have without, that you can approach. Whereas all of a sudden you're like, oh, have you tried this? And then be like, oh, I really like salad.
Yeah. Whereas with a group of people, it becomes less about the food. No matter what, even with its family, if you're out with friends, if you're entertaining, it becomes, the food is important, obviously, but it's less about the food and it's more about the company.
Yeah, it's about the connecting with other people.
Yeah. It's almost as if the food is another person and the significance of that other person decreases the more people there are.
Yeah, that's to me, yeah. I always think about like Thanksgiving Day dinner or Christmas dinner, and not that any of us get to do that nowadays, but and maybe that's a little bit of what this podcast is about, of dreaming of those days to come again where we can sit around with friends and family and share food. But that's my thoughts on it, is that like, that's that bringing everyone in, and the food is that thing that brings you together, and then you learn stuff about everyone. So
absolutely.
So when you're together, do you think there's any difference, say there's more than two people, is there any difference if you're eating comfort food together or really healthy food together?
I mean, I think, well, I think that there's a range of types of food. I mean, I don't know why I'm saying I think there is a range of types of food. There's a range of types of cooking, and there's a range of things that food answers or does for you. And some might just look at it as nourishment. Some just might look at it as, art, a way of experiencing something artistic. But comfort food to me is family. And there's, and I think that it applies to a lot of different people, a lot of different ways. But for me, when I think of comfort food, I think of back at times when I was comforted, when I was younger with my family, maybe relatives as well. And any of those dishes, those shared dishes, that's what comforts me.
What's your comfort dish?
I don't know. Actually, I would have to think about it. I think there's a couple, and they're not, and I'm going to hurt family member feelings if they're listening, but I don't think my grandmother used to make chicken a la king, and it was okay. It wasn't amazing, but so much was put into that, and so much was around that, and so much effort, and people were talking about it, so that when you ate it, even though it was an okay meal, it was much more than what was on the plate.
Right.
So that's interesting. If you ever have chicken that's pretty mediocre, you say, like my grandma used to make.
Yeah, I suppose, which is horrible. I mean, I loved her and what have you, but I'm just being honest. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I noticed food had much more power than what was actually on your plate. Like, that's when I was like, oh, everybody's making a big deal of this, and it's just okay. And then I was like, oh, it's because it's the whole tradition around it, and it's the comfort and the whatever. So I don't know. I'm dominating the conversation here.
How about you, Will?
I think you hit on something really interesting with comfort food. You could argue Christmas food, Thanksgiving food is a family thing. It is a comfort thing. It's togetherness. I can't imagine meeting up with friends and all having shepherd's pie or a pot pie or something traditionally that's bangers and mash or something that's comfort food. I think the types of food you would eat would be different depending on who you're with. If you're with your mates, your peers, you'd have something slightly more exotic, slightly more fashionable. If you're with your family, something slightly more comforty. And that's probably because family is comfort. Family is the first people you ever met, and family is where you came from, your utter comfort zone for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But you haven't told me your dish.
Pot pie.
Pot pie?
Yeah, I love pot pies. I mean, I've
become a master at making them lately.
Oh, really? Oh,
Master.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that. The Costco 10-inch pot pie, obviously, chicken one.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in the Thrifty's pot pie. But let's not go down that road too much.
I didn't even know they made them. But okay,
yeah. They're pot pies everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or even at the farmer's market, you can get the old pot pies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely delicious.
I keep thinking of what my favorite comfort food, and it keeps bouncing all over the place. And it's like I think, oh, pot pie, I love pot pies, and every time I have one, I'm like, yes, there's just something about that crust and the creamy chicken stuffing in there.
Oh,
so
I mean, really, that's all turkey a la king is.
Yeah.
Or chicken a la king is.
Yeah.
Is
well, maybe that's just the ultimate comfort food. But there's other things, like, I have to say, there's nothing I enjoy more than after a stressful day, just a bag of potato chips.
Nice. I don't even know if that would be considered comfort food. That's sort of like... maybe, I guess.
It is, because it comforts
by
you.
definition,
like that's what I'm thinking. I love an old grilled cheese.
Oh, yeah.
It has to be with tomato soup for me.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. I have one that's like, it's a terrible dish, but it reminds me of being a kid, and it just cheers me up. But the old clam chowder.
Oh, yeah.
I love clam chowder, but I honestly have this thing about the BC Ferries clam chowder. I have not eaten it in a long time, but I remember having a kid and having the clam chowder on the ferry.
It's the only clam chowder I'd eat as a kid.
Yeah?
It's the BC Ferries.
So the BC Ferries one, is that because it's nicer, or is it because it's connected to the experience, the memories?
Well, I think that's exactly what it is. It's the experience. It's going on an adventure.
Right. Every time you got on that boat, you were going on an adventure.
And it was something that my parents never made at home. Like, if my dad did do a clam chowder, he did a Manhattan, so a tomato-based chowder. So it was never that creamy, and there was just something about about, that creamy. And it's not that I would even, as a kid, eat clams. Like, you put clams in front of me, I would be like, that's gross.
Right.
You know? And I'm a kid that grew up on the beach, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was hard for me to get down an oyster.
Right.
Until I got into my mid-20s. Like, I was like, nope, not going to happen. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I'll have an oyster. That's cool.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, I agree. I agree that yeah. So there's that whole comfort again, right? It takes you back to a place that you used to be, and when times were good or easier, or just your romanticized memories of things where you just sort of polish off all the dirty parts and you just remember the good.
Yeah.
So
those good memories. So let's think about culture and food. People meeting, perhaps they know each other, perhaps they don't. How does people from different cultures mixing with food from different cultures, how does that play out?
Wow. I don't know, John.
Well, I think
it's your question, John.
I think it's
your question.
I'm just looking at, like, I think that's what food lets you do. Like, it bridges that gap, and it makes you understand people, because, I mean, I feel like I'm lucky that I've always grown up in a household that we tried lots of foods. It wasn't like we had our mashed potatoes every Friday night. It was like, we had Chinese food, we had, Vietnamese food, we had Mexican food. It was like we took everywhere, and my dad really liked to cook, so we'd do sushi one night, and the next night would be, we'd do a pot pie at home. So it was really neat to sort of experience those different flavors, and it sort of opened my eyes up to a lot of things.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. Yeah.
And it's just, it's pretty neat to see. And I think that's something that I've enjoyed over my years, is eating, doing some traveling and sitting down with other people and eating meals, and just seeing how dinner works at other places. There's, sitting down with someone who makes sure they do a blessing before they eat their meal is a neat experience, and it's fun.
Yeah. And so taking it in another direction, I think that, although I agree with everything that you said, I think too that when it comes to cultural sort of influence, I think that there's so much to be learned from a dish. Like, if you take something that is a national dish, or something that's identified nationally, whether it's official or not, with a certain nation or a certain culture or a certain group, and you eat that food, I honestly, I don't know if I'm just weird that way, but I go into I start thinking about things like that. I start thinking about, wow, this, like, the seasoning here or the spice blend, like, those are most likely, in national dishes usually reflect the nation, so those are most likely readily available there, or time honored there, or valued there. And I think you just start to, maybe it's a cooking method, maybe it's a simple presentation, maybe it's an elaborate presentation, but you start to think about the people that turn this into something that they identify nationally with. And like, I see it almost as like a history lesson or a cultural lesson when you're eating those identifiably cultured foods, like, I don't know. I think that there's a lot there. I think there's a bit of a story in each that you can discern, that you can pull from, that, I don't know, it's enticing to me to try new foods because of that, because I want to experience what they grew up eating, what they identify with.
So you're saying it's almost a way of learning about
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe more so for me than other people, because I have said that to other people and they think I'm ridiculous. But
no, I think it's an eye-opening experience into, like, the culture and how a community, because everything revolves around food, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I'm always amazed when you look at, like, we'll go to England and go London itself, how the city is actually built around food. And you can see, as from how it started out, the initial city where everything was within the center of the city, and how with the Industrial Revolution, how all of a sudden, like, all the food was exported from the outside and imported to the center of the city, and that there's those directions to get in there. And so that's how the food evolved. And so each area and region has that, and that's why they get their specialty dishes, because that's how they got their food, and that was what was available. So it's just interesting to see a little behind the scenes of how things, I mean, food's the one thing that connects us in every aspect, I think. Like, it doesn't matter what color you are, what your religious beliefs, whatever. You all need to eat. I mean, you won't eat certain things, but that's irrelevant. We can all eat the same.
Just a comment there on what you were saying. I've lived in this area majority of my life, on and off. I've been back and forth, but the majority of my life has been spent here. And this is a comment. This isn't like me admonishing anybody or whatever. But knowing the exact point you just made about how food, you can see cities are literally designed around the acquisition of foods and how they would come in and come out of the town or whatever. It blows me away how many people have lived in this valley, in this area, on this island their entire lives, and just blanket, I don't eat seafood. I'm like, how do you not eat seafood? We are literally in the seafood mecca. This is where, like, this is just such a vibrant place for so many great things from the sea. And 100 years ago, if you didn't eat seafood, you probably weren't going to make it if you lived here, you know. And now people, they don't have to eat the local food. Like, they don't. Some of them don't eat the local food whatsoever.
I mean, my girlfriend's vegetarian, and she will break that 3 times a year to eat seafood.
Yeah, wow.
She said it's just something I really crave.
Yeah.
So that shows the strength.
Yeah.
Of that idea of, you know, you really are missing out in these waters, some of the best in the world.
Absolutely.
Actually, since we're talking about our home here,
sure,
and what we have such a strong food community within it, I think, because we have a strong farmers market. And the one thing you can realize that's different about our community to every other community is right in the center of our community is a farm.
Yeah. It is interesting. So many people that have come here from out of here have said that to me. What the hell? You have a farm in the middle of your city.
In the most productive spot, you know, where the
most valuable land in the town
is a farm.
Yeah.
And it's a wetland. And so it's protected, and it will always be there.
Yeah.
And
I think it gives us a bit of a unique
and
look.
I think it's one of those things, if you think about it, every day you drive by a farm to get to anywhere in this town.
Actually, that's a really interesting point. I wonder if that affects people here. I wonder if that is one of the reasons why we have so many farmers here.
Well, it does
because you
right
grow up
now.
looking at a farm every day.
Well, it does right now because you get they're fertilizing right now.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So you get that big aroma that comes off the field as you drive in, and you're like,
lovely.
Ooh.
Are we talking about the road from Superstore to 17th Street Bridge?
Yeah. What was Farquharson Farms?
Farquharson Farms. What is it called?
And is it now? So that can't be built on? I've always wondered why
Ducks Unlimited owns it, and so it's a wetlands for the.
It's protected
for amazing. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It really does connect people.
Yeah.
So
maybe we should get back on topic.
Yeah, a little bit of food and
history of our town.
Yeah.
And so moving on a little bit from learning cultures, how do you think dining with friends varies from dining with total strangers?
Or by yourself.
Or by yourself. But
sure.
Friends and total strangers is the question.
Friends and total strangers? I think I answered that a little earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, I would say you get to know someone a little bit more intimately.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So I think the difference between a friend and a total stranger, if you're dining with friend or friends, you've got a little bit of history baked in, I'm sure. You've got a bit of a shorthand with that person. That's what I get from an implication of a friend or the title of friend. So I don't think that I think you can go more in depth because you already have a common ground. Or a common language, and B, you can you don't have to discuss some of the minutiae. Whereas if you're with a total stranger, I would think that you want to find a common ground with that person, so you're going to go into the details a bit more. I don't know.
I'm just thinking about the couple job interviews I've had over the years.
Sure.
Over a lunch meal or something like.
Yeah, I never would have guessed it actually, but a chef would do that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and it's been really to me it's stressful because like all of a sudden, you know,
they're testing your palate or you're testing your choices.
Testing my choices,
right?
I'm the worst when it comes to a menu because I literally go through a menu and scan everything, and I'm like, ooh, I just want a plain sandwich, but I'm like, I got to go something fancier than that. So
right.
What's the fanciest dish on the thing? And then I'm like, but I don't like that, or
I'm
going through it.
Well, that's interesting because you're thinking you're going to be judged maybe a little bit by
I have a lot of anxiety in my life.
No, but it's I actually, thinking back, I've had a few times when I've been around primarily people that have been several places above me in any workplace. And I've been like, it's a bit of a minefield, you know. Do I order something that's sophisticated but the most expensive thing on the menu, or do I order what I want to, burger or fish and chips? You know, so many, and I know fish and chips is very popular in Canada and the UK, and just being like, fish and chips, please, mate, and hand the menu back. It just sounds so unrefined. Yet someone's asking for the so and so steak with the demi glaze and blah blah, and you're like, oh god, maybe I've ordered the wrong thing. And by the way, I care so little about that. I'd rather stand out that I ordered chocolate milk and fish and chips.
I'd taken, we were out for a staff party or staff dinner. I'd taken my staff out. We had a particularly good run for a couple of months, and we just went out to celebrate it. And I remember this one guy, Dean. Sorry, Dean, that I'm singling you out if you're listening.
That's the bus running over.
So Dean we were at Kingfisher, and which is a restaurant both John and I have worked at in the past. But this is many, many years ago. This is 15 or so years ago. And and as we were getting ready to order, Dean tucks his napkin into his shirt, and a lot of the other staff started laughing at him. And I was like, what's the problem? And he's like, I've never been to a fancy place. Isn't this what you're supposed to do at a fancy place? And we're like, no, it's not. And other people were sort of, I don't know. They were like, it was mean-spirited. And I was like, don't. Like, what? Like, the purpose that we're here for is to experience something that you don't normally experience. The experience that he comes through the door with doesn't matter. We're all on the same page. So he didn't know that you're not supposed to do that. Like, Dean, order whatever you want.
Yeah.
Don't feel like we're judging you. And hey, everybody stop judging him. Like, that's, to me, like, it's important. I find food as a leveler, you know, like it brings us all to the same table at the same level. There's no need to feel superior or inferior.
I've got a little story on that. With me is I remember when I was young and I was a Sea Cadet. And so I was picked out of my division to go to have dinner with the commanding officer.
Wow.
And so there was a bunch of us that all came in there. And of course it's a proper fine dining dinner. Right. So there's all the cutlery in there. But it was like, I remember going in there and being super nervous because they're like, okay, so they're teaching us the etiquette of how to properly, you know, work from the outside in with your cutlery. And these are all your spoons. And then when you drink your soup, you take the spoon and you go away from yourself and then bring it to you. And I was like, well, I can just shovel it in this way. Like,
I've got to.
You're gonna get your uniform messy if you do that.
Well, I was like, I don't care.
Put your bowl up to the mouth.
And I remember going through all this and being ready, and then like they're like, and I can't remember what the choices were, but I ordered roasted chicken.
Okay.
Like, so on the bone.
Right.
And I'm literally like, I get to that point and I'm like, when do I get to pick it up? Like,
when does that part come along?
Does that?
No, apparently no.
No,
it's really frowned upon.
I wonder where finger licking good came from.
That's comfort food.
Yeah.
That's when you're sitting on your couch and
when you're around friends or family.
Yeah.
Well, it does remind me a little bit of the Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic. You know, he's a commoner, you know, spending time living under a bridge, and then the next minute he's on the dining with incredibly rich, you know, Victorian people.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, being taught how to eat, and they're judging him. They don't like him.
Right.
You know, so they're using that as a way to put him down, but they're doing it whilst eating.
Eating. Wow. I didn't think we would get to. We were going for positive, and then you're like, you
brought James Cameron into this.
Invite your enemy out for a meal.
Just really, I mean, I realized that we got to wrap this up, but your naval story made me think of my grandfather's naval story. And I went with my grandfather, accompanied him to the boat that he served on. He had the HMS Red Deer, for anybody that cares. Okay. They had a reunion of all the surviving members got together in Red Deer. I don't know why. Because of the namesake of the ship, and had a reunion. And I went there, and for the first night, they served only stuff that they ate on the boat. And so here you are talking about this fancy admiral's meal, and we ate fish eyes and snot, which was what they called tapioca back then. They called it fish eyes and snot. And we had red lead and bacon, which red lead and bacon was stewed tomatoes with a piece of raw bacon sitting in it. And that was your primary protein. That was the entree of the dish.
Good grub.
I just remember, and it's so funny though. Like you take a look at the military or the naval, you look at the lowly, what they're eating: fish eyes and snot, red lead and bacon. And then you're sitting there in a banquet hall with roast chicken on the bone, and hilarious.
It wasn't that great.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot.
I think
so. I think what is the conclusion of this? It's just good to eat with people.
Yeah. I don't think that we were trying to say whether it's good to eat with or without people. I just think that there's
just the experience.
Lots of different contexts. I think that's great.
There's so many different variables, context, culture, the type of food you're eating, whether you know them, whether you don't know them. It just whether they like you or not, whether they're, what you want from them. Are they just friends or, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And it's a great opportunity to experience new things, right? I think that's the spark of life is being able to experience something new.
Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's true.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Edible Valley Podcast. I'm chef and host Jonathan Fraser.
And thanks. I'm Darren Howlett. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm William Stringer, the producer. Thank you very much.
And that wraps up another episode of the Edible Valley Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks goes to the local businesses that help support our podcast. They make it possible for us to showcase your local food community. We'd love you to follow us on your preferred social media at Edible Valley, where you can check out our blog, find recipes and tips, behind the scenes, and of course keep a lookout for where we are going to turn up next in your Edible Valley.
Let's do our next episode on diet.
Sure.
Yeah. To diet or not to diet.
Yeah.
That's actually a really, really good idea. And that's also John's really nice way of saying, Darren, well, shut up.
We gotta get I gotta go to work.
Anyways, I said to John just as I was packing my camera bags for coming over, I was like, I figured out the title of the book.
This has been an Edible Valley